Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. We've got two people running for president, and neither one of them, for most people, seem to be the kind of candidates we really know if we want to have in office. After all, with all the fear-inducing behaviors that are being revealed to us through the news, we kind of wonder what kind of a world have we begun to inherit when we see such chaos. Joining us back here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is a special guest who says if we stay true to our sacred purpose in the face of this fear that we seem to be experiencing every day, that we could probably find ourselves getting back on track to find opportunities to create love for action and to connect with our sacred purpose and peace within. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, Reverend Violet Young. Thank you for joining us here on the program today.
I am so delighted that you're having me back.
Now, tell us about this article that you were writing about what your inspirations were behind this to kind of give our listeners a little better context about what we're talking about here today.
Well, it's really interesting. As I said in the article, I had it all planned out. I was going to write an article more about spirit and about connecting with spirit on the other side, because that's where my focus has been recently since I lost my husband a year ago. But I had this article all planned, and all of a sudden, when it was coming time to write it, I just couldn't remember it. So I was like sitting here with my hands on the keyboard going, okay, what's going to happen? And this is what came out. I've been, I've been observing the the political situation, and I am inundated with emails constantly. And I'm feeling all these horrible feelings, and people around me are freaking out, and I'm staying calm. And I'm sitting here going, everybody else seems to be freaking out. What's wrong with me? But then I realized that it's basically a tap dance routine that we're being shown yet again. And if we fall prey to every tap dance routine, we'll never get our own work done. So this is what popped out of me when I started to write, and it just feels that if we are focused on what's really important in our deepest heart, we can stay above the fear, because the fear is how people control us. And fear is false evidence appearing real. There's really only two emotions, love and fear. And the place to be is love.
Seems reasonable enough. Anyway, why do you think this is all happening? What do you sense is going on out there?
Well, what I really feel, is that we have been going through an intense, and I mean really, really, really intense, upping of our energies over the course of the last few years. And as our energies increase, and as we go from three-dimensional to fourth-dimensional to fifth-dimensional energy, eventually all of the disharmony cannot hang with all of the harmony. And just like pouring water into a vessel that's full of mud, eventually all the mud rises to the top, washes away, and what's left is clear. And so I have been observing the other side, the dark side, so to speak, as getting more and more desperate, and because they're in their death throes. Their death seems to be taking a lot longer than I wish it was, but I do feel that as time goes by, all of this stuff will wash out, and people will be having what they really need.
It seems overwhelming, especially when you look at what's happening with the police shootings. For
instance. God!
You've got a lot of people out there that believe, we've kind of been pushed around long enough, and this is retribution to showing that we're no longer going to take that. But what are your thoughts on something like that? Again,
it's like people are out of control. They're everywhere. They're out of control. When all these shootings started, this one and that one and something else, and you have this huge faction of people who seem to hold all of the strings, let's just call them the gun lobby, they're holding all the strings, and they've got it. They want it the way it is. And all of us are out here going, what the heck? You've got people just walking around and intermittently, for any reason, just shooting folks. Things are starting to heat up. And I'm watching people, the police are out of control in a lot of situations, and there are really, really great officers out there. I know a lot of officers that are really, really on it. They know what their job is. They work from their heart. And then there are the other ones who are in a place of fear. They can't even give you a reason why they're shooting because they're in a place of fear. They see something and they react. But, eventually this will all stop. That's my feeling. That's my prediction.
Now, I know that one of the things that you were talking about and an inspiration for you is that of Anne Frank. Tell us about that.
Well, those people who may know me well have, over the years, understood my connection in understanding the Anne Frank thing. She always said wonderful things, and here's a young girl. She didn't realize that what she was writing was going to be echoing down the halls of time. She was a young girl with her own thoughts, but she was determined while she was in that imprisoned state of living in a place where she couldn't make any noise. She was living in her mind and in her heart, and she kept writing these wonderful things, and I wanted to illuminate those because they're words of hope. And frankly, the inspiration for connecting that with this article was an op-ed piece that I wrote that Ava Schloss wrote in the New York Times. She was the stepdaughter of Otto Frank, who was Anne Frank's father, and Otto Frank married Ava Schloss's mother after he came out of the concentration camps. And that technically makes Ava Anne Frank's stepsister. And they had been best friends, or really close friends, before this happened. And I see so many times when I read Ava's article how she really does connect Donald to Hitler. And she's, of course, not the only person who's been connecting Donald to Hitler. And when you watch his charismatic ability to connect with people in a kind of bizarre way, you see the same rumblings, and you stand there and you look at that with your mouth hanging open going, really? People are buying this? The guy's up there and he has done nothing for you. But then again, it's pie in the sky. And so I decided I didn't really want to politicize my article, so I came in it from a kind of oblique angle by bringing up the statement of Anne Frank, and then all of the things that she said were still true. So when you look at this whole situation and you recognize what's happening and you hear from somebody who lived through it, like Ava Schloss, it's time to really take a good look at what we're trying to elect, don't you think?
Well, and that would be the obvious thing, but it seems that no matter what direction we go this way, when it comes to who leads our country, we still seem to be increasing the same old nonsense that we believe we're trying to get away from.
So true. So, one just has to keep the hope going, which is another reason I used Anne Frank, because she, in the face of everything, continued with her hope. I mean, one of the things that she said, one of her quotes, was, oh, hello, my computer's not operating the way I want it to, of course. One of the things that she says in here is that it's difficult at times like these. Ideals, dreams, and cherished hopes rise within us, only to be crushed by grim reality. It's a wonder I haven't abandoned all my ideals. They seem so absurd and impractical. Yet I cling to them because I still believe, in spite of everything, that people are truly good at heart. And Daniel, that's truly how I live. I believe the people in their hearts are good.
Well, and when you pay attention to the news, and it was interesting because, I had a friend of mine talking to me about how, deeply frustrated, confused, and even at times angry that he was beginning to feel because he was taking in all this news and thinking to himself, well, based on what we're being hit with, it seems so overwhelming to change any of it. But the fact is when I step outside my door, I don't see any of the kind of nonsense that's going on out there. And then, of course, people might say, well, everybody thinks it won't happen to them until it does happen to them. And my thought is, well, that's probably true, but it's not happening outside my door anyway, and it hasn't been happening for a long time.
Right. And I am really blessed because where I live in Yachats, we're pretty mellow here. And I have to be concerned. I have a child who's an adult, but I have a grandson. You can't go through life without having a certain level of concern for your family. But I try very hard to stay in a place of love. And I don't have TV. I don't have direct TV. I don't have charter cable. I don't have Dish. I watch videos. I watch DVDs. I choose what I watch very carefully because I don't choose to be having my adrenaline gland overworked. My life is stressful enough. I don't need more stress. So I tend to not buy into the fear. And what I find is the less I watch that stuff on TV, the less I pay attention and pretend that that's real, the more comfortable I become in staying focused to my heart. And it's a choice. I make a choice every day to stay in a place of love. And it's not necessarily easy because, I'm human. I look at something, I see a headline, and I go, oh, my God. But I'm choosing to pull myself away from the fear. It's sort of like watching a wreck, It's like you can get so mesmerized by it that you just lose yourself. And I'm not willing to get mesmerized by the fear. I'm not willing to get mesmerized by the machinations of individuals that want me to stay in a subjugated way. I'm not interested in that. I've never been interested in that. Well, that's not so. Early on, I bought into all that stuff. Of course, I was young and focused on what was around me. And over the course of my time, I knew that it wasn't true, and now I choose to be conscious enough to decide whether I want to be in that place of fear. I refuse to go there. Am I super wealthy? No. Do I have all kinds of fancy stuff? No. Am I wowed by the gimmicks and the doodahs? No. I'm just not going to pay attention to things that aren't really important. And what's really important for me is following my heart. That's what my life is about.
Well, that's certainly a great way to go. And you might even think, too, as you take a look at what's happening here and you feel the experiences within inside of your body, that probably a good course of action is saying, how can I learn and grow from this in a way that becomes effective in moving the direction that I would like to experience the world going into?
Exactly. I mean, if you want to, it's sort of like, it's like being at a smorgasbord, okay, or a buffet dinner. You get to have anything on the buffet that you want. Well, say the world is a buffet, and you get to walk down the line and pick what you want. I am choosing to not have that kind of stress. Does it mean that I don't feel for people? No, I'm an empath. I feel for a lot of people. That's why I don't shop in Walmart on Fridays and Saturdays. It's too busy. There's just too much stuff going on. It's why I don't like to go to casinos. There's too much fear. There's just too much distraction. It's not real. But I want to be able to be available for people who need assistance. And so I keep myself out of the fear and in the love. And that's what I'm choosing to put on my plate. So when I watch movies, I'm choosing movies that have positive outcomes. I'm choosing things that make me feel good when I'm watching it. I'm not going to sit there and watch full metal jacket where I'm on the corner of my seat and I'm sweating bullets, so to speak, and I'm all revved up. I can't do it. I used to do it. Can't do it anymore. Just can't do it. Don't want to do it. I want to stay in a positive place. I want to know that there are people around me that do positive things, and I live in a community where people do positive things all the time. Our communities around here on the coast, they run on volunteer help. You know, things that are people who have a medical problem, they stick a can out at the local grocery store and people put change in it. Somebody holds a spaghetti dinner to raise money for somebody. I live in a community where people really seem to put it out there to energize for others, and that's what I focus on.
You know, you bring something really interesting up. It's pretty fascinating to me, especially, you know, here in America. When you go back to the time that, for instance, 9/11 had occurred, it was amazing how much we were all pulling together. We didn't really have the attitude, at least not initially, we need to go and get retribution. It was more like, you know, we need to understand why did this happen. We need to understand the people that we perceive to be our enemies that perhaps created this. You know, the Muslim world, you were seeing a lot of newspaper articles about this, you know, talking about who they are, what they believe in. And so that's what you've seen. The initial reaction from us wasn't one of retribution, but it was one of compassion and understanding. And it just amazes me how often it takes what seems to be a large-scale disaster that brings us together, but then over time it all fizzles away and we kind of go back to our own thing and paying attention to our own lives and not really concerning ourselves. But this is really an ongoing process. It isn't just something you wait for a big disaster before you decide, okay, well, I'm going to engage these principles, for instance.
This is the long haul. Some people get very connected to the short haul. I'm not in a sprint, Daniel. When I was young, I'm 66 now, so I'm not really old, but I've been around the block a couple of times. And when I was young, I was impatient, and I expected things to change immediately. Now, over time, it isn't that I don't want them to change immediately. It's that I've understood that things tend to take a longer time than one might think. And so I'm in it for the long marathon. And I expect miracles, and I get miracles fairly often in my life. But, you know, general public reporting for duty, sir. There's a lot of folks out there who are in a place of fear. And the more they're willing to open up to love, the easier their lives will be. It doesn't mean everything's going to be perfect. But one of the things that I see here in Ann's article that is really an important quote is how wonderful it is that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world, and how many people feel powerless and don't realize that the smallest gesture, a smile at somebody that you might not think about smiling at, can be how you start to change the world. It's like you don't have to do much to start tipping the scale in a different direction. And I'm hoping that when people read the article, that's what they'll recognize. You know, she said, everyone has inside of him a piece of good news. The good news is that you don't know how great you can be, how much you can love, what you can accomplish, and what your potential is. End quote. That's Anne Frank talking. This is a young 13-year-old girl writing a diary while she's stuck in this place where she can't make any noise and she can't move for hours every day. And she's coming up with these incredible statements that have been guiding people for years. Even though she's not, quote-unquote, here, her words are here. So I look at those words and I realize I am in command of myself. I'm the one who can take charge. I'm the one who makes a difference. And in fact, in our program for our event, which is our 20th year coming up, One of our exhibitors a long time ago, her name is Bobby Greenfield. She has a universal affirmation in here, and I say it every year at my opening ceremony. I am the one who can make a change. I am the one who can make peace happen. I am the one who carries the light. I am the one who releases the fright. I am the one. A lot of people feel so completely helpless, and they don't realize that they're just being shown by the media, by the powers that be, so to speak, that they should remain helpless. If all of us decided to come from our heart and work on making change, wow, like she says, how wonderful it is that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world. Smile at someone, recognize someone, help someone. Be aware that someone isn't in as good a position as you are in, and have some compassion. I think that the biggest thing that's missing, besides the love factor, is compassion. We have, a lot of people seem to have lost the ability to be compassionate.
It almost seems like we've lost the ability to know how or why to be compassionate, too, sometimes.
Yeah, we're not getting, I don't get paid for it.
Yeah, that seems to always, that's interesting you bring that up, because you were saying that you live in a community there on the Oregon coast where you tend to, help each other out. You volunteer quite a bit. In coastal towns, if it isn't bustling a lot of times, I know with tourists that, it tends to be a town that has to figure out some other ways to dynamically keep people, working and making a living. And one of the things I remember some time ago, I found myself in a situation where I had plenty of time to do volunteer work, so I chose to go to what was known as a neighborhood house where they give out, for instance, emergency food boxes, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, I'm going to go ahead and do this. And it's interesting when you think, what your perception or your judgment is about something like this, where you think, well, this is only for the poor and the downtrodden that are coming here, the people on the streets. And what I was really astounded by was that, I caught that little bit of a judgment, but the kind of people who were actually coming in there were people who mostly were from middle and upper middle class incomes. And it kind of surprised me, because I'm thinking, well, I didn't think those kind of people had those problems, but they do. And that everybody will find themselves probably at one point, we hope not, but at that one point, that they're going to have to reach out and say, I hate that I'm in this position, but I've got a need right now that needs to be fulfilled, whether it's food or blankets, whatever the case is, and to be willing to accept that. And so, I guess a way of reciprocating is saying, okay, since someone has given to me, how do I give now that I may be in that capacity where I'm not totally at a point of need? And it's an interesting way to look at things.
Well, it's there, but for the grace of God go I, right? One of the things that's important to recognize is just like every artist needs an audience, because that's you're showing somebody your art and they need to appreciate it. And so a performer performs and everybody claps. That's an exchange of energy, right? People don't really realize that, but that's what that is. It's an exchange of energy. I sing a song, you like the song, you go, wow, thank you very much. Well, for some reason or other, our culture has an attitude that if you require assistance, there's something wrong with you. You shouldn't do that. So people who need feel guilty for needing. And a lot of people who need don't even get what they need because they're too embarrassed to request it. On the other hand, when you allow someone to help you, you're helping them. Because people do have an inherent need and desire, covered up though it may be sometimes, to offer assistance. So sometimes I need help, and you help me, and I say thank you. And sometimes you need help, and I can help you, and you say thank you. And that is an exchange of information. It's an exchange of energy. It's an exchange of love. And that's how we keep things flowing. When one person is always the giver, the people taking or needing can feel really guilty. But if it goes back and forth, everybody gets a chance to be the one who can give, and everybody gets a chance to be the one who receives. In a perfect world, that would be happening all the time. But our world is somewhat imperfect, one would say, in places, and so it makes it a little more difficult. The truth is, when I have needed to get a food box, I've been willing to lower myself, so to speak, in my own head early on and receive a food box. There have been times. On the other hand, I'm more in a position to offer food. Well, that's that time for me. But it could change, you know.
That's true.
It's true. I mean, when you talked about middle class, it's like, what middle class? Everybody that I used to know that was in the middle class is slowly slipping into the not-so-middle. And I live in a community where there's a lot of people that are homeless, and the governments are just struggling to figure out what to do with people. We've got a community where there's a lot of vacation rentals and not a lot of places for people who are working the service jobs to live. And because a lot of places that would have been apartments have turned into vacation rentals because somebody can make more money that way. And let's just lay it on the table. He who has the most money still does not win. He who
not
has
all the time they don't.
Still does not win. And, as I wrote this article, I segued from Anne Frank into Mother Teresa. And that's because for many years, and I mean back into the 80s when I was doing other work when I lived in California, I would often compare, for just the sake of demonstration, I would compare Donald Trump with Mother Teresa as a contrast. Now, Donald Trump, back in the 80s, at that time, he was still a blowhard, and he was still showing, how much money he had and how much this he had. And if you looked at all the photos that were available of Donald, he never looked happy. He doesn't look happy now. He never looks at rest. He never looks at peace. He
kind of like
always
Kanye
looks
West, right?
What?
Kind of like Kanye West.
Yeah.
He's
always
a guy with all this money, and spouting off his opinion, but every time you get a photo of him, it's like, who gave you my permission to do that?
Exactly.
Anyway.
And Donald, he had all the money. He's got enough money to buy everything, but he never looks happy. Now, on the other hand, I've looked at Mother Teresa photos for years. Here's a woman. She had a sari. She had a Bible. She had a pair of sandals. She might have had a toothbrush. She's knee-deep in poop, dealing with people that are on the edge of their lives a lot of the time in an area where, everybody's poor. And the woman constantly looked beatific. Hello. Why is that? Was she rich? No.
Right.
She was making a silk purse out of a sow's ear every day. Was she wealthy? Not in money. But was she wealthy in love? Yeah. And, I used a number of her quotes because I see what she was trying to do. And I look at these two women, Anne Frank and Mother Teresa, as heroes. And their words are still echoing clearly for those who pay attention. And I think that if we really paid attention, we could really learn a lot and model that behavior. And isn't it lovely that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world?
Right. And it's amazing, too, just how simple it is. You just take a step forward and decide to do it. You don't wait, until somebody else gets out on the dance floor, so to speak, before you do anything. Just do something, whatever it may be, and you'll find that it's a lot easier than you think. And And if you can trust your instincts, you can trust your heart, especially since this is why you're doing it in the first place, you'll find that life actually guides you to the direction and where you need to be. And you'll never find greater fulfillment, I think, once you found yourself in that special place that only you belong. It's pretty amazing stuff. And, I wanted to, first of all, take a moment to thank you for being able to join us here on the program and share this with us. But for our listeners, how can they find this article that you wrote?
Well, the article appears in the event program for Pathways to Transformation. And the event is our 20th year. Can you believe that? I've been working with you guys for several years now. I think 5, 6, 7 years. You've been helping promote our event by putting up flyers and stuff. And 20 years of bringing the new and unusual to Yachats, Oregon, and helping people be aware that love is the most important thing in the world. So the article appears on page 4 of the Pathways program, and the program is, of course, the show is August 6th and 7th in Yachats, and you can find it online at www.chucklingcherubs.com. I want to say one of the things that Mother Teresa says here is, do not wait for leaders, do it alone, person to person. And do not think that love, in order to be genuine, has to be extraordinary. What the need is to love without getting tired. Be faithful in the small things, because it's in them that your strength lies. And I think one of her most important quotes is, not all of us can do great things, but we can do small things with great love. And if you pay attention to those, and you go out in the world, and you do small things with great love, you will see a garden grow right before you. And you'll keep yourself happy because you're going in a positive, love-inducing direction.
Very good. Violet, thank you so much for joining us here on the program. And one more time, go ahead and give out that website.
The website is chucklingcherubs.com, because we always believe that spirituality is fun. So chucklingcherubs.com, and the event is happening August 6th and 7th in Yachats, Oregon, in the Yachats Commons.
Very good. Violet Young, thank you for joining us here on the program, and great success to your program for helping others to be able to know. Don't wait for someone else to get on the dance floor. Get out there and dance by yourself, and others will join you.
There you go, and thank you, Daniel, for shedding light on so many sides of things.
You betcha.
All right.
I want to thank you, the listeners out there, for tuning in. You can also discover more by visiting us at Beyond50Radio.com. That is our website with the number 50. You can also follow us on Twitter at Beyond50Radio, as well as Facebook. We encourage you to sign up for our weekly e-newsletter to stay up to date on what's happening here at Beyond 50 and what's coming on upcoming programs. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Beyond 50 Radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.